Okay, now that we know when there is an increase or a decrease in demand and supply, that will change the equilibrium price and quantity. In this video, as a bit of an extension to that dot point, I want to look at how the market actually moves from one equilibrium to another. And this is a common SAC or exam question. Sometimes it's called disequilibrium analysis, which is a bit fancy. So the way the market moves from one equilibrium to another is truly magical, and it's done via shortages and surpluses. First, let's look at a shortage because I think that's where the magic happens for a consumer. Now, there are two things that will cause a shortage, an increase in demand or a decrease in supply. We're basically talking about a situation where there's not enough stuff, which is really bad for living standards, right? And anytime economists see a line or something being sold out very quickly, that's a sign of a shortage, and we don't like shortages. Now, we could use any market to illustrate this, but I want to pick a specific example. Now, let's imagine we're talking about the market for gas. Gas is a commodity. It's a natural commodity that is used to produce energy around the world. Australia is an exporter of gas, but it also comes from Russia and the United States and other parts of the world. It's a very important commodity to the global economy for now. So it's used to heat our houses, but it's also used to create electricity. They burn it. Now, if we look at it on the demand and supply curve, you can see here that there has been a decrease in supply, a shift in the supply curve to the left. And let's imagine that this has happened because, and we're looking at the world market for gas, so I should have labeled my graph here, but let's imagine this has happened because there is a supply chain disruption. That's the new VCEE factor, right? It could be anything that shifts the supply curve to the left, but for now it's a supply chain disruption, which is really just because of the war in Ukraine. Okay, so Russia have stopped supplying gas to the world markets for reasons we won't get into. So there's a shortage, and let's look at why. So after the supply curve shifts to the right, what we need to do is think at the current equilibrium price here, what is the situation? So what we do is we trace along the curve, and as soon as we hit the new supply curve, which is the bolded blue, we trace down to the x-axis and see the quantity supplied is here. We keep tracing along to the original demand curve and we trace down and we see the quantity demanded is there. So what that tells us is that quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied. And we could actually measure this shortage, and we could say, well, if quantity demanded at this price was 20 million cubes of gas and quantity supplied was 10 million cubes of gas, then the shortage would actually be 10 million cubes of gas that the market needs. Okay, so we have a huge problem in markets. Gas is a really important commodity. There is not enough gas to power the world. However, do not fear, because the market without an intervention will solve this problem. It will clear this shortage. And this is where economists will often talk about the invisible hand, because nobody's controlling this. There's not a person who decides to do this, who steps in and says we need more gas. The decisions simply happen. And they happen for the reasons that we've been learning about. Remember the law of supply, that suppliers have a profit motive, and the law of demand, that consumers demand less when the price increases because of the substitution and income effect. So, depending on the market, there can be two ways that this starts, but in this market, suppliers are going to respond first. They're going to notice that they're running out of gas. Okay, and because they're smart and they're profit motivated, they will increase the price of gas. And they're going to do something else that's really important, because as the price of gas rises, remember their incentive, they are going to drill for more gas, and they're going to encourage people to work longer hours to get more gas, to get to the market and clear the shortage. Now, we depict this by an expansion along the supply curve like this, okay, or like this, an expansion along the supply curve. Now, at the same time, the consumers are going to respond to the increase in price, and they will begin to drop out of the market. Or in this case, they're just going to use a little bit less gas, right? Everybody needs to use a little bit less. So as the price of gas increases, remember the income effect, they'll just stop turning the heating on as much or the air conditioning on as much, or they may substitute for some other product, the substitution effect that satisfies a similar need and want. Maybe they'll get solar panels, or maybe they'll just wear a blanket like we have to in my house. But if the price rises, we've already established consumers will demand less, which is what we want. We don't have enough gas. Okay, so this is illustrated by a contraction along the supply curve. Okay, so they'll substitute out to some other product. And there is an expansion along the supply curve until we meet the new equilibrium point. So sorry, I think I said that wrong. Contraction along the demand curve, expansion along the supply curve, until we meet our new equilibrium, and we trace across to find our new price, which is higher than the original price, and our new equilibrium quantity somewhere in between our shortage here, which might be like 15 million, okay? And the market has cleared the shortage. Okay, now you don't need to draw that, but I think it's really important to see how that works to help us understand. And this happens in every day in many different markets, unbeknownst to us, now beknownst to you as an economics student. And this is why prices go up and down all the time to clear shortages and surpluses, which I think is amazing. All right, a few technical points here. I said it just before that sometimes suppliers will react first. In other markets, consumers will react first. So in certain markets, like the housing market, if you've ever been to an auction, consumers will bid up the price. So we'll start on the demand curve first. But there's a bit of a summary you can have a look at. And I want you to try and do the same thing, but for an increase in demand, which will have exactly the same impact, just start with an increase in demand. Hopefully that helps. Bye for now.